Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Story English Zone. Today, we travel more than 2,000 years into the past, to ancient Egypt, where a young queen is about to lose everything. Outside her palace, Roman soldiers control the streets of Alexandria. Her army has been defeated. The man she loved is gone. And soon, her kingdom will no longer be free. Yet Cleopatra still wears the golden crown. She was only 18 when she became queen. She was intelligent, ambitious, and highly educated. She understood politics, spoke several languages, and knew how to make the most powerful men in Rome listen to her. How did a young queen who once lost her throne become the woman Rome feared? And what choice remained when everything she had fought for was gone? As you listen to her story and learn English today, remember this. You are not fighting Rome or protecting a golden throne, but each day you study, you are quietly building a kingdom of your own. Your confidence, your freedom, and your future. Let us begin the unforgettable story of Cleopatra, the Golden Queen of Egypt. If you enjoy learning English through remarkable stories from history, subscribe to Story English Zone and join us on this journey. Cleopatra VII was born in 69 BC into the Ptolemaic royal family. Her family was not originally Egyptian. They came from Macedonia and Greece. Almost 300 years earlier, Alexander the Great had conquered Egypt. After his death, one of his generals, Ptolemy, took control of the country and founded a new royal family. His descendants ruled Egypt for generations. Cleopatra was born into this powerful dynasty, but she was also born into a kingdom that was slowly losing its freedom. She grew up in Alexandria, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. It was a city of white stone palaces, crowded markets, busy harbors, and ships arriving from distant lands. Greek, Egyptian, Roman, Jewish, and many other cultures met in its streets. Alexandria was also famous for knowledge. Its great library had made the city a center of learning. Scholars came there to study science, medicine, philosophy, literature, and the stars. As a princess, Cleopatra received an excellent education. She studied politics, philosophy, public speaking, and diplomacy. Ancient writers also remembered her remarkable ability to communicate in different languages. We cannot be certain exactly how many languages she spoke, but it was clear that she understood the power of words. She could speak to people in a way many members of her family could not. But while Cleopatra was learning how to rule, she was also watching Rome grow stronger. Egypt was still rich. The Nile gave life to its farms, and Egyptian grain fed people far beyond its borders. Its ports brought wealth through trade. But the royal family had become weak, divided, and deeply in debt. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, depended on Roman support to remain king. When his enemies forced him out of Egypt, he turned to Rome for help. Roman power restored him to the throne, but that help came at a great cost. The young Cleopatra was learning a frightening truth. Egypt's crown could no longer survive without Rome's permission. In 51 BC, her father died. Cleopatra was about 18 years old when she became queen. According to her father's wishes, she was to rule with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. Following the customs of their dynasty, they may also have been formally married, although Ptolemy was still only a child. At 18, Cleopatra wore the golden crown. But a crown is not the same as control. She did not want to remain a silent figure while older men ruled in her name. She began making decisions independently and placed herself at the center of official documents and royal ceremonies. Unlike many members of her Greek-speaking family, Cleopatra also presented herself as an Egyptian ruler. She took part in Egyptian religious traditions and connected her image with Isis, one of Egypt's most important goddesses. She wanted her people to see more than a foreign queen sitting in an Egyptian palace. She wanted them to see a true pharaoh. But the men around her younger brother saw her growing independence as a threat. Powerful advisors controlled Ptolemy XIII. They did not want to share authority with Cleopatra. The royal court divided into two dangerous sides, and Egypt's problems grew worse. The kingdom faced debt, political unrest, and pressure from Rome. Poor harvests and food shortages caused suffering among the people. Every decision became more dangerous, and every mistake could be used against the young queen. Slowly, Cleopatra's name began to disappear from official documents. Her brother's supporters took greater control of the government. Then, around 49 BC, Cleopatra was forced to leave Alexandria. The queen had lost her throne. She escaped towards Syria, far from the palace where she had grown up. But she did not disappear quietly. She began gathering soldiers and support, preparing to fight her way back into Egypt. She now faced two choices. She could accept exile and live the rest of her life far from her kingdom, if her enemies allowed her to live at all, or she could return and fight, even though her army was limited and failure could mean death. She had been born a queen. Now she stood outside her own kingdom, with no palace, no secure army, and no promise that she would ever return. Then, Rome's civil war arrived at Egypt's door. Pompey, one of Rome's most powerful generals, had been defeated by his rival, Julius Caesar. He fled to Egypt, hoping the royal family would protect. Instead, the advisors of Ptolemy XIII had Pompey killed, believing this would please Caesar. They were wrong. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria, he became involved in the struggle between Cleopatra and her brother. Cleopatra understood that she had to reach him before her enemies could control the story. Later storytellers imagined Cleopatra being secretly carried into Caesar's room inside a rolled carpet. The exact detail may be uncertain. What matters is that she found a daring way to enter the palace and meet him in secret. She did not approach Caesar simply as a frightened woman asking to be rescued. She presented herself as Egypt's rightful ruler and as a valuable political partner. Caesar saw a queen who might help him bring stability to Egypt. Cleopatra saw the power that could return her to the throne. She had reached the most powerful Roman alive. But to win back Egypt, she would first have to survive a war inside her own capital. Caesar tried to settle the conflict between Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII. Their father had wanted both children to rule Egypt together, and Caesar ordered them to accept this arrangement. But Ptolemy's advisors would not give up their power so easily. Their forces surrounded Caesar and Cleopatra inside Alexandria. Fighting spread through the city. Streets that had once carried merchants and scholars became battlefields. Smoke rose above buildings, and soldiers fought near the royal palace and harbor. Cleopatra had returned to her capital, but she was not yet safe. If Caesar lost, she would probably lose her throne and perhaps her life. For months, Caesar's forces were trapped and heavily outnumbered. Then Roman reinforcements arrived. Caesar gained the advantage, and Ptolemy's army was defeated. The young king tried to escape. He is generally believed to have drowned in the Nile while fleeing the battlefield. The brother who had helped drive Cleopatra into exile was dead. Cleopatra returned to the throne and became queen again. She now ruled beside another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. It was an extraordinary victory. Cleopatra had survived exile, entered the palace in secret, persuaded Caesar to support her claim, and defeated the men who had taken her kingdom. But she had not won alone. Roman soldiers had helped restore her crown. Caesar's power protected her throne, and everyone in Egypt understood it. Cleopatra had won back her crown, but Rome had helped place it on her head, and Rome rarely gave anything without expecting something in return. The relationship between Cleopatra and Caesar soon became both political and personal. Caesar gave Cleopatra the protection of the most powerful man in Rome. In return, Cleopatra could offer something Rome deeply valued: a stable Egypt. Egypt produced enormous amounts of grain. It had busy ports, valuable trade routes, and great wealth. Caesar did not want this important kingdom to fall into chaos or into the hands of his enemies. Cleopatra and Caesar may also have shared real affection, but their relationship was never only a love story. It was an alliance between two leaders, each with power and ambitions of their own. In 47 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to a son. She named him Ptolemy XV Caesar, but he became better known as Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. Cleopatra declared that Julius Caesar was the boy's father. Caesar never officially recognized Caesarion as his legal heir in Rome. Yet for Cleopatra, her son may have represented a powerful dream. Caesarion belonged to the royal family of Egypt. If he was also accepted as Caesar's son, he could connect the wealth of Egypt with the growing power of Rome. A child might achieve what armies and treaties could not. Cleopatra later traveled to Rome and remained there for some time. Her presence attracted attention and caused controversy. To many Romans, she was a foreign queen with wealth, influence, and a close relationship with Caesar. Some admired her, others distrusted her. She was not a Roman wife who could quietly fit into their society. She was a ruler in her own right, and she represented a kingdom Rome wanted to influence. For a moment, Cleopatra seemed closer than ever to securing Egypt's future. Then Caesar was murdered. In 44 BC, a group of Roman senators attacked and killed him. The man who had restored Cleopatra to her throne was suddenly gone. Cleopatra left Rome and returned to Alexandria. Not long afterward, Ptolemy XIV died. Some ancient sources and later historians have suspected that Cleopatra was responsible, but there is no certain proof. Whatever the cause, her young son Caesarion became her new co-ruler. Cleopatra now ruled Egypt beside her own child, but Caesarion was both a source of strength and a dangerous political target. His name connected him to Caesar, and that connection could help Cleopatra's position. It could also threaten powerful Romans who wanted to claim Caesar's legacy for themselves. Rome had entered another period of civil war. Caesar's supporters fought his killers, while ambitious men struggled to control the Roman world. Cleopatra had survived exile and war. Now she had to protect both a kingdom and a child. During these difficult years, she worked to strengthen Egypt. Before her rule, the royal court had suffered from years of family conflict, debt, and dependence on Rome. Cleopatra restored stronger central control over the government. She paid close attention to money, taxation, trade, and the production of grain. For ordinary Egyptians, her reign was not a golden age of freedom or equality. Taxes could still be heavy, and royal power remained strict. Farmers and workers continued to carry much of the kingdom's burden. Cleopatra did not turn Egypt into a perfect land. Her greatest achievement was more practical. She kept it alive as an independent kingdom, while Rome continued to swallow other lands around the Mediterranean. Alexandria remained a major center of trade, culture, and learning. Ships filled its harbor. Goods and ideas moved through its markets. Cleopatra also continued to present herself through the image of Isis, connecting her Greek royal family with the ancient religious traditions of Egypt. She was rebuilding more than her personal power. She was trying to give Egypt enough strength to survive, but Caesar's death had left a dangerous question. Which Roman leader could now protect that survival? One answer soon appeared. Mark Antony had been one of Caesar's closest supporters. After Caesar's murder, Antony became one of the most powerful men in the Roman world. He took control of Rome's eastern territories, where Egypt's wealth and resources were especially important. In 41 BC, Antony ordered Cleopatra to meet him at Tarsus. He wanted her to answer questions about her loyalty during Rome's recent wars. Cleopatra knew this meeting could decide her future, but she did not arrive as a weak queen begging for mercy. She sailed to Tarsus in a magnificent royal display. Her ship, clothing, music, perfumes, and attendants were carefully chosen to present her as a ruler of extraordinary wealth and almost divine authority. Later stories focused on her beauty and claimed that she simply seduced Antony, but Cleopatra brought far more than beauty. She controlled money, grain, ships, and a strategically important kingdom. Antony needed resources for his military plans in the east. Cleopatra needed a powerful ally who could protect Egypt and help restore territories once controlled by her dynasty. Cleopatra did not arrive as a frightened queen, asking Rome for mercy. She arrived as a ruler Rome needed. Antony and Cleopatra became lovers, but they also became political partners. Together, they had 3 children. Antony spent long periods in Alexandria, where they built a life that mixed family, ceremony, and enormous political ambition. In the donations of Alexandria, Antony publicly recognized Cleopatra and their children as rulers of several eastern territories. Cleopatra appeared closer than ever to restoring the wider power once held by the Ptolemaic dynasty. To her, this was a chance to strengthen Egypt and secure a future for her children. But in Rome, Caesar's adopted heir Octavian saw something very different. He presented Antony as a Roman leader who had forgotten his homeland and fallen under the control of a dangerous foreign queen. Cleopatra's intelligence, wealth, and independence became weapons in Octavian's propaganda. Rome was no longer arguing about Cleopatra as a queen. It was beginning to present her as an enemy. Cleopatra had used alliances with Rome's greatest men to protect Egypt. Now she and Antony would have to fight the man who intended to control Rome alone. The alliance between Antony and Octavian could not last. Both men wanted power, and each believed he was the true heir to Caesar's political legacy. As their relationship collapsed, Octavian began preparing Rome for war. But he did not present the conflict as another Roman civil war. He made Cleopatra the enemy. Octavian obtained what was said to be Antony's will and claimed that Antony wished to be buried in Alexandria. He also used the donations of Alexandria as evidence that Antony was giving Roman territories to Cleopatra and her children. To Octavian's supporters, Cleopatra was a dangerous foreign queen who wanted to control Rome through Antony. To Cleopatra, Rome was the empire slowly taking away Egypt's right to exist independently. Yet Cleopatra and Antony were not simply innocent victims defending themselves against a stronger power. They also wanted territory, influence, and a new political order in the eastern Mediterranean. Both sides used wealth, public ceremonies, powerful images, and propaganda. Rome officially declared war on Cleopatra, not Antony. This allowed Octavian to describe the coming battle as a patriotic war against a foreign threat. The war would decide more than who ruled Rome. It would decide whether Egypt remained a kingdom at all. In 31 BC, the two sides met near Actium, on the western coast of Greece. Cleopatra provided ships, money, supplies, and experienced sailors. Her support was essential to Antony's war effort, but their forces were already in trouble. Disease spread through the camps. Supplies became difficult to obtain. Some allies deserted, while Octavian's commander, Agrippa, cut important sea routes. When the great naval battle began, Antony and Cleopatra's fleet struggled to break Octavian's control. At a critical moment, Cleopatra and part of her fleet sailed through an opening in the enemy line. Antony followed her. For centuries, people described this moment as proof that Cleopatra became frightened and ran away, causing Antony to abandon his men for love. The truth is less simple. Historians still debate whether their escape had been planned or whether it was a desperate decision after the battle had already turned against them. Cleopatra may have been trying to save the remaining ships and treasure needed to continue the war. Whatever the plan had been, Actium became a devastating defeat. It was not the immediate end of the war. But after that day, Cleopatra was no longer fighting to expand her kingdom. She was fighting to keep it alive. Cleopatra and Antony returned to Alexandria. The golden crown was still on her head, but much of the power behind it had disappeared. Ships were lost. Territories were slipping away. Allies who had once praised them now moved toward Octavian. Cleopatra tried to prepare Caesarion to succeed her. She also attempted to negotiate with Octavian, hoping to protect Egypt and secure a future for her children. But Caesarion was especially dangerous to him. Cleopatra had publicly presented the young king as Caesar's natural son. Octavian's authority came partly from being Caesar's adopted son and political heir. As long as Caesarion lived, another possible heir to Caesar remained. Years earlier, Cleopatra had entered Caesar's room with a daring plan to regain her throne. Now she faced Caesar's heir with almost nothing left to offer except the kingdom she was trying to save. And Octavian no longer needed her cooperation. In 30 BC, his forces entered Egypt. Antony tried to organize a final defense, but his soldiers deserted or surrendered. Then, Antony received false news that Cleopatra had died. Believing he had lost both the war and the woman he loved, Antony chose to end his life. According to ancient accounts, he was taken to Cleopatra while he was dying. They had once imagined a new order stretching across the eastern Mediterranean. Now their world had become one room, one final meeting, and a kingdom falling outside its walls. After Antony's death, Cleopatra met Octavian and tried to negotiate one last time. She may have hoped to protect her children or preserve some part of her royal position, but she understood what could happen if she remained alive. Octavian wanted to return to Rome as a victorious leader. Cleopatra, displayed in chains during his triumph, would become the greatest symbol of his success. She would no longer be presented as a queen, a scholar, or a mother. She would be displayed as Rome's captured enemy. Cleopatra died in August of 30 BC, at about 39 years old. The most famous story says that she allowed a poisonous snake to bite her. However, the exact method of her death remains uncertain. Some historians believe she may have used another kind of poison. We cannot know every thought in Cleopatra's final hours. But her death denied Octavian the living captive he wanted to display before Rome. It was the last decision she still had the power to make. Her death did not save her kingdom. Caesarion was captured and killed on Octavian's orders. Cleopatra's 3 children with Antony were taken to Rome. Egypt became a Roman province, and the Ptolemaic dynasty came to an end. The cost of Cleopatra's ambition was terrible. She regained her throne, but she needed Roman military power to do it. She protected Egypt's independence, but her alliances pulled the kingdom deeper into Rome's civil wars. She built relationships with Caesar and Antony, but her enemies transformed her private life into propaganda. She tried to create a powerful future for her children. Instead, Caesarion was killed, and her other children lost their home. In the end, she preserved control over her own final choice, but she could not preserve her kingdom. Was Cleopatra defeated because she trusted Rome too much, or because no Egyptian ruler could have resisted Rome forever? Cleopatra had ruled for nearly 22 years, while Roman power continued to grow around her. She used language, diplomacy, wealth, and royal imagery as tools of government. She forced Rome's most powerful leaders to treat Egypt as a kingdom that still mattered. For centuries, stories about her beauty and love affairs often hid her education, political intelligence, and responsibilities as a ruler. She was not simply a romantic heroine or an innocent victim. She was a protector of Egypt, an ambitious monarch, a mother, and a deeply controversial leader. Rome conquered Cleopatra's kingdom, but it never conquered her story. Once, she had been an 18-year-old queen, wearing a crown she could barely control. Years later, she made the strongest men in Rome recognize the power of Egypt. In the end, the golden crown was lost. Cleopatra failed to save her kingdom's independence, but Rome could not make her small, silent, or easy to forget. Cleopatra understood that language was more than a way to speak. It was a way to enter another person's world. Perhaps English still feels difficult to you. Perhaps you sometimes believe your voice is too small to be heard. But every word you learn gives you another way to express your ideas, defend your choices, and connect with opportunities beyond your borders. Cleopatra could not control every force around her. but she prepared herself through knowledge, courage, and communication. You are not fighting Rome or protecting a golden throne, but each day you study, you are quietly building a kingdom of your own, your confidence, your freedom, and your future. Which Cleopatra will you remember most? The intelligent ruler who fought to protect Egypt, the ambitious queen whose alliances carried a terrible price, or the woman whose story was rewritten by her enemies? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you would like to continue learning English through unforgettable lives from history, join us for the next story.